Here we are in that time between Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot. And I think many of us are asking the question, how will we celebrate this year? How will we celebrate Simchat Torah when it's only 1 year past October 7th and we're still at war? How can we find the joy that we're meant to have in this upcoming holiday of Sukkot? And I want to share with you a beautiful idea that I saw in the booklet that was put up by Rav Daron Perez. It's called Days of Awe in Times of War, and it's in honor of his son, the son of Rav Daron and Shelley Perez, Captain Daniel Perez, who was murdered on October 7th. And he calls the question, why is Rosh Hashanah called Rosh Hashanah? The more obvious name of the holiday would be Reshit Shana. We know Reshit is the first word of the Torah, Bereshit, and there's a pasuk in Devarim that talks about Reshit Hashana ad Acharit Shana. It's referring to the beginning of the year. That would seem to make more sense. And Rav Daron explains that the name reflects the essence of the day. It's a time to focus on our Rosh, our minds. And he says, and I'll quote, it's a time to examine our spiritual and mental paradigms and thought processes in preparation for the year ahead. Rosh Hashanah is a time of the mind. It's a time to focus on what our beliefs are, where our Emunah lies. And the shofar as well is meant to awaken us from our slumber, our mental slumber, and help us focus, to be Ashrei Ha'am Yod'ei Trua. Again, this idea of focusing on the mind. Praise is the nation who knows the Trua blast, who hears the shofar cry, and we awaken ourselves in order to coronate the king, right? That's a mental act, to proclaim God as our king. And that is something that strengthens our Emunah, to recognize that Hashem is in charge of this world. So we start the year with the idea of Rosh Hashanah, of sharpening our minds, and a mental map of our belief system. And then we proceed to focus on our hearts with the holiday of Sukkot. We know we take on Sukkot, we take the Arba Minim, the 4 species, and each one represents a different body part according to the Midrash and Vayikra Rabbah, right? We have the Lulav, the palm, represents our spine. The Hadas, the myrtle, represents the eye. The Arava, the willow, represents the mouth. And the Etrog, the citron, represents our heart. And we know many Hasidic stories focus on the search for the perfect etrog. It is the most expensive by far of the 4 species of the Arba Minim. And if you're familiar with the movie Ushpizin, it's also referenced there. This focus on the etrog, because the etrog is the heart. Sukkot is a holiday of emotion. It's a holiday of the heart. It's a holiday, all 7 days, meant to be a time of joy. As we know, we say, Shivat Yamim Techog LaHashem Elokecha. 7 days you'll celebrate Hashem. V'hayita ach sameach, and you should have nothing but joy. We're meant to focus on the etrog. We're meant to focus on emotion and be happy. So we see this process from our mind to our heart. And Rosh Hashanah has to come first. The mind has to rule over the heart. Because how can we manage otherwise? How can our soldiers go to war? They need to focus mind over heart. How can families who are uprooted from their homes live day to day? How do families who have experienced shattering losses manage to cook a meal and do basic things? It needs to be mind over heart. And this idea is found in a Likutei Moharan from Rabbi Nachman of Breslav. It's from a song that I remember learning some 25 years ago from Yosef Karduner. But in Likutei Moharan, chapter 1, it says, Ki ish ha-Yisraeli, which I always found interesting. It's a Jew, but ish ha-Yisraeli. Tzarich tamid listakel b'sechel shekol davar. You have to look in the intellect, focus on the mind. And through that, ki ha-sechel hu or gadol, it will bring a great light and will enlighten your ways. And that is essentially how we can find joy. We sharpen our minds, and it opens the pathway to joy. And this idea is brought in a beautiful book by Rav Judah Michel called Baderech, where he talks along the path of tshuva, where he talks about many, many stories. It's really an inspiring book, and he brings this idea that in Mizmor chapter 16, in Mizmor of Tehillim, you have 2 psukim one after the other. You have Shiviti Hashem Nenegdi Tamid. You have the idea of God is with me, right? I place God before me, and that is followed by Lachein Sameach Libi. Therefore, I will find joy. My heart will be joyous. He explains, in his words, Rav Judah Mishal says, Shiviti, equanimity, is the product of a conscious choice, right? The moach, the rosh, to live with the knowledge that Hashem is always with me. When I am secure and I know that I'm not alone, my heart can begin to open in joy. Once again, we have this message. We start with the rosh, we start with the mind, and it brings us to our heart. Mind over heart. This idea which is found in the Tanya, that the moach shalit balev, ha-moach shalit al halev, is something that needs to guide us. So I hope that we can face the challenge, so to speak, of leaning into joy over Sukkot by sharpening our minds, by digging deep, as Rav Daron Peres says, digging very deeply into our reservoirs of faith and perspective, so that we can have mind over heart, that in this transformative time from Rosh Hashanah to Sukkot, we can open our hearts with joy. So I hope this gives some perspective, and mind over heart can help us celebrate a beautiful and meaningful Sukkot and Simchat Torah. May Hashem continue to bless us with Yeshuot and Nechamot and protect over all of Am Yisrael. Chag Sameach.